As a member of the Alumni Association, I would like to welcome you all to this, A Human Face on Our Environmental Health Epidemic. This book puts a human face on the toxic dangers assaulting us in our everyday environments. And as a former victim, survivor, health advocate, and legal avenger, Alan offers an aerial view of one of the most important global health issues of our time. And so please, let's welcome Alan Bell.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome, distinguished alumni, friends, students, and esteemed members of our panel that's going to be discussing this when we continue on in our program. And most of all, Trish, could you raise your hand for putting on this amazing event tonight? Alumni Association. For those of you who don't know, I've lived in California for the last 20 years. And I've come back to the University of Miami, my home, your home, to alert all of you about a silent epidemic that's happening in your own homes, schools, and workplaces. How many of you in this audience have family members that have cancer? Raise your hand. Keep your hands up. How many in your family has Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autoimmune diseases, even osteoporosis? Raise your hands. Wow. Put your hands down. Well, I can tell you this, that you all are not alone, and that all of these diseases that I've just mentioned are environmentally linked. And you might want to ask, why is this happening? Listen to this. The women in this room, sitting in this room right now, 1 out of every 3 of you are going to get cancer in your lifetime, according to the American Cancer Society. And the men, we've got it worse, because 1 out of every 2 men sitting in this room are going to get cancer in our lifetime, according to the American Cancer Society. And children, it's the #1 cause of death, cancer, in the United States of America. And you might want to ask, why is this all happening? Here's some clues. Since 1950, over 85,000 chemicals have been introduced into our environment, and few have been tested for their toxic effects on humans. And as a result of this, according to the National Institutes of Health, 8 out of every 10 cases of cancer is caused by the environment that you're exposed to in your everyday life, in your home, your school, your workplace, and your community. And indoor air pollution, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, 75 million Americans become ill each year because of the sick buildings that we work in. As a result of this, more people get sick and die from environmental exposure than all those afflicted with AIDS, accident, war, and crime combined. This is the silent epidemic of the 21st century. And if this scares you, it should. And I see a few of you squirming in your seats there. Listen, the good news is it doesn't have to be, because this is preventable. If you arm yourself with knowledge, you can modify your lifestyle, minimize your risk, and prevent this from happening to you and your family. So the paradigm has shifted. Good health is no longer just about diet and exercise. It's also about what you breathe and what you touch. That's why I wrote this book, Poisoned. It puts a face on this global issue. And I used my journey, my personal journey, to illustrate how this is happening all over the planet. So here's my story. Let me get a little more intimate with you here. After I graduated from the University of Miami Law School, I became an organized crime prosecutor in Dade County, right here. I prosecuted organized crime, Colombian cartel rings, and the mob. Suddenly, I became ill. After the doctors did all these blood tests, they told me that I was poisoned. And the most likely candidate was the mafia. What they later learned was, it wasn't the mafia at all, but it was the sick building that I was working in. And it just so happened that me and my coworkers were working in a brand new building. New carpeting, new glues, new paints, all kinds of new ingredients. And we all got sick. In my case, I had brain injury, which I still have, and immune system damage, which I still have. And it caused me to become hypersensitive to everything in the environment: perfumes, colognes, hairsprays, automobile exhaust, newsprint. And every time I got exposed to these substances, I experienced grand mal seizures. In order to save my life, doctors told me, here right at the University of Miami, that I needed to quarantine myself away from all man-made chemicals. And the only place that they could think of was in the middle of the Arizona desert. So they airlifted me to a little 800 square foot bubble made out of glass, brick, and steel. And outside this bubble, cactus, 50 miles in all directions. No roads, no schools, no people, desolate, isolated. And I ended up in this bubble, in a wheelchair, tethered to an oxygen tank, looking like a concentration camp victim. No hope of recovery, no way of getting out. But miraculously, there was a new treatment that came available, and it got me out of the bubble. And the first thing I did was I started a charity called the Environmental Health Foundation. And we raised money to find treatments and cures for all kinds of environmentally linked diseases. And to my surprise, some pretty powerful people backed what we were doing. Al Gore, who was vice president at the time, endorsed it. Gene Cernan, the commander of Apollo 17, and top university and governmental-based scientists all over the US became a part of our scientific advisory board, including, yes, the University of Miami was on our board. Then, after starting this charity, I jumped back into the legal arena. And instead of prosecuting one crime at a time, I decided that I wanted to go after the ultimate crime, which is the crime against humanity which we are committing against ourselves. We are poisoning ourselves unknowingly, and it needs to stop. So I teamed up with other lawyers, as the moderator mentioned. I teamed up with a guy by the name of Ed Massery. Has anybody ever heard of the movie Erin Brockovich? Raise your hand. Well, Ed Massery was her boss. He was the lawyer. I worked with Ed on cases and going after big bad corporations that are poisoning people. And then I hooked up with another guy by the name of Jan Schlickman, another lawyer. Has anybody ever read the book or seen the movie A Civil Action, starring John Travolta? Okay. Jan Schlickman wrote the foreword in my book. And I also teamed up with him on a case in Fort Lauderdale involving a massive toxic tort case. So that's basically my personal journey. And that brings me back to the University of Miami, to our family, to all of us that have one common concern. And that is, I assume we all want to know, how can we best protect ourselves? That's what brings us here today. I submit to you that it all starts with our students at the University of Miami. You guys, how many students do we have in the audience here? Okay, probably the rest of them are taking finals or whatever. But it's up to you students. We're passing the baton to you guys and you gals to take this to the next generation, because only you can reverse this. Our time is almost up. We're passing the baton to you. How about, do we have any nursing students here? Okay. Well, the nursing, well, we have, she's representing the nursing school. It's up to our future nurses to improve the care of environmentally injured victims. It's up to our future medical scientists. Anybody from the medical school here? Okay. It's up to you to find better treatments and cures for diseases that are linked to the environment. How many is here from the architectural school? Raise your hand. And it's, okay, but it's up to your students to better design our buildings, to make them safer so they won't get sick. I know we have a prominent architect out here. Mr. Larry Beam has got to be out here somewhere, a primary architect, nationally known, maybe internationally known, and we're gifted with his presence here as well. Anybody from the law school, raise your hands. Okay. It's up to you students to do two things when you get out of law school. The baton is being passed to you. You need to push for stricter regulations so people won't be exposed to environmental toxins in their homes and in their schools and in their workplaces. And for the victims that have already become injured from these, it's up to you to represent them in court and give them a key to the courthouse so their injuries were not made in vain. So you students might be asking, that's a pretty big thing you're expecting of us, but not really. Because these esteemed professors that are going to be speaking here today, they're giving you students all the tools that you need to take this to the 21st century. They're the real unsung heroes here. The professors and the teachers that are teaching you this. So I'm often asked, a lot of people ask me, they say, how did you survive 8 years inside a bubble in a wheelchair tethered to an oxygen tank with no hope of ever getting out? And I must tell you all that a big factor in me being able to do that is when I was a student here at the University of Miami, I was taught how to overcome adversity. And you students that are sitting here today, you're being taught how to overcome adversity, whether you realize it or not. You see, education is not only about scholastics, it's also about growing as an individual. So people outside this university, they may not understand it. It's a Keynes thing. Just look at our football team. 5 national championships, we'd never come back. Look where we are. We're back, right, Ben? That's right. So that's why I'm here. I'm here for two things. I'm here to challenge the university as a whole to become a world leader in the fight against environmentally linked disease. And I'm also here to encourage and inspire you students in your own way to make a difference when you get out of this school and help the fight against environmentally linked disease. And I'll submit to you, it all starts right here, right now. Thank you.
Wow. That was so inspirational. Thank you, Alan. That was wonderful. Thank you. So welcome to our panelists on A Human Face on our Environmental Health Epidemic program this evening. So, are we ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. So what I'd like to do is to start us off by posing each panel member a question. So we'll start off with Alan. Alan, why did you write this book?
Well, I sort of covered that when I was up there earlier, but I wrote this book to put a face on this issue, to make people aware of what's going on in their own homes, in their own schools, in their own workplaces. Most people aren't even aware of what's happening. And for those of them that are, they don't know what to do about it. And the key is that the key is prevention. You could prevent this from happening to yourself and your family. If you modify your lifestyle, you can minimize your risk. That's why I wrote this book.
So what is your most important advice to people who want to protect their families from toxic chemicals?
Well, like I said, it's not just about diet and exercise. It's also about what you breathe and what you touch. So before you come into contact with any kind of a product, whether it's a building product, clothes, hairspray, a bed, paints, baby bottles, the list goes on and on and on. Read the ingredients. Become an informed consumer and look at the ingredients and make sure that you're minimizing your exposure when you go to the grocery store or when you go to purchase plywood at Home Depot.
Interesting. So now we're talking about the environment and how then we are to interact and become aware. Last question of the panel. What are some of the facts that most people don't know about toxic exposure?
I think most people don't realize that our government is not protecting us. They're not protecting us. In the United States, as a general rule, chemicals are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So what that means is, from a practical standpoint, the Chinese could bring in all this toxic drywall into our country. Our babies could be drinking BPA-laced baby bottles. They could have
toys. Or the lead-based
toys, diapers, cribs. The list goes on and on and on. And this is in contrast to other countries like Germany, France, and even Canada, where the laws are much stricter that won't allow this kind of stuff from happening. So that's one thing that we're not aware of. And like Dr. Kumar said, the effect is very elusive with these exposures. It's elusive. It's not like someone walks across the street and gets hit by a car, they're injured, they get taken to the hospital. We know who the wrongdoer is. It's the car that hit them. In this case, as Dr. Kumar has said so eloquently, from a scientific point of view, is that it's a cumulative effect and it's also delayed. And when you're exposed to all these environmental toxins over years and decades, when you get asbestosis or you suffer from any of these other chronic illnesses like cancer or autoimmune diseases like we spoke about early on in this talk, you have no idea how you got it. And when we talked about the ingredients on the products, did you know that in the United States, consumer products are not required to display the ingredients on their bottles? Home cleaning products, there's no ingredients on them. I was just on KTLA, it's a big news station in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago, where California just passed the first law in the country that made it a requirement to disclose all the ingredients on consumer cleaning products. And that's what needs to happen throughout this country, but not only with consumer products, but with everything across the board, whether it's the toys, whether it's the toxic Chinese drywall. I mean, the Chinese, they're smart. They send it right over here and we take it. There's other countries that won't do that. That needs to stop. So those are some things that and the thing is what we don't also understand is a lot of people say, okay, we understand that we're exposed to these poisons, but what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I mean, we don't know where it is, when it is. The heck with it, we'll just enjoy our lives. Well, there's a lot of things that you can do. If you educate yourself, you could make yourself aware of all of these things and where there's poisons and where there's not poisons and stay away from them. Modify your lifestyle and minimize your risk. This is preventable. If you arm yourself with knowledge, you can modify your lifestyle and you can minimize your risk. And if you look at consumer demand and supply, look at Whole Foods. Their stocks are going through the roof. Amazon just bought them. consumers, mothers want to know how to protect themselves and their families. That's why they shop at stores like Whole Foods, because the products that are there, the ingredients are displayed on them. And this needs to happen on a global level, not just in Whole Foods. So my message is that there is an answer, and there are things that you can do about it to protect yourself and your family.
Today, the XL pipeline spilled 200,000 gallons in South Dakota.
What?
It's an alarming event of petroleum spill, which could be a time for action. What is it that we should be doing as a result of learning of this man-made disaster?
I think you're a lawyer, you must go.
Are you asking legally?
Yes.
You all talk about taking action. So the Keystone Pipeline just spilled 200,000 gallons. Doesn't affect us today, but this seems to be the kind of opportunity for people who care about our environment, our health, safety, and wellness to do something. What is it that we in beautiful Paradise, South Florida should be thinking of doing?
Well, I could just tell you from my perspective, what I would do is I would hire people like Dr. Kumar as my expert, and I would go down there, just like Aaron Brockovich did in the community locally there, and just like I did over in Fort Lauderdale on a case there, and go door to door and talk to the people in the community and see if they want to join in on a lawsuit. And the thing is what you do is you hit them where it hurts. Ben, you know that. You hit them right in the pocketbook, and you sue them, and you make them pay. Because that seems to be the only instant thing that people respond to at this point in time. I mean, we could talk about, like what I was discussing earlier, about it's the students that needs to turn this thing around and make stricter regulations and prevent these things from happening to begin with. But what do we do in the meantime when these disasters occur? The only thing that I could think of doing from my wheelhouse as yours is to hit them where it hurts financially. There is and Dr. Kumar, I'm sure that you could agree with me on this, that the top governmental scientists from NIEHS, Ken Olden was a friend of mine. I had this environmental health summit at the Biosphere 2. Sure. Ken Olden was appointed by Bush 1, the head of the National Institutes of Health. These scientists need to, what happens is that the public scientists, the ones that work for the government, like NIH and CDC and EPA, what do they do when they leave governmental offices? They go right in the private sector, right?
And their mouth is also shut down too. For example, I have lots of friends at EPA. When you speak to them, if I bring them in any of the research, they will say, we cannot state it.
That's right.
But nonetheless, to add up all what you're saying hit them where it hurts the heart. But that's not true. You know Monsanto,
okay,
right? So Monsanto's strategy, for example, they say, okay, we will lapse all these legislation because the penalty is much cheaper than fixing the things.
I'm not talking about penalty. I'm not talking about governmental penalties. What I'm talking about is suing them civilly in court for damages. Let's say you get run over by a car. You're injured, okay? But it was due to a defect in the car. But the car is defective because there's some kind of a symbiotic relationship between GM and the government, so they're not fixing the defect. That's okay. You could still sue GM privately and go after them.
Right.
And the symbiotic relationship that's occurring between corporate America and the federal government in this wheelhouse with the scientists going back and forth, you got to follow the money, because that's where it all boils down to, is following the money.
Well,
do you agree with that, Ben? Do you agree with that?
In some respect, but proving, I think the doctor from the public health said, proving the cause is very difficult. Yes, when petroleum spills all over, you know there's something wrong.
Right.
But when we
Prove the connection.
Well, in that case, see, in your scenario, I believe you can.
We can prove that. That's not a problem. We have much advanced science. We have the most sophisticated science already advanced. It's not we cannot do it. It's the inertia we won't be allowed to do. But with regard to, for example, this farm, right? There is an oil spill. It happened with BP, right? They penalized them. They're happy to pay $1 billion to you. Not a problem. And with regard to proving that they are responsible for it, well, such type of instances won't happen again. They will keep happening over and over again, unless you just ban them. Because these corporates can buy you, your government, and everybody else. They're that rich. It's not the system. We make system. So system begins with you, system begins with me, system begins with all of us. So if we begin to pay attention to small, small things, then people cannot fool you. Look at the menu of McDonald's today. Did they have ever salad or fruit, let's say, 10 years ago? They did not, because their sales began to decline. People want more fruits and vegetables. Now that's in their menu. How did it happen? Because people begin to demand for it. Junk food is bad for you, right? Yeah. Same thing can happen with virtually every consumer product if you don't buy them. And you can buy them when you develop your understanding, your knowledge. If it's not there, dig for it.
That's right.
Right?
It's supply and demand.
Yeah, it's the we, not the system per se, because we make systems. You need to begin from your own home, your own kid. Cook a good meal for your own kids. Don't buy this from anywhere else. Then you will know what ingredient, what kind of chemicals you are feeding them every single day before you regret 20 years after.
Fantastic, well, everyone. Thank you. What a riveting discussion that we've had here tonight. We'd like to thank our panel members. Thank you so very much. And I thank you all for spending your evening with us. And good night. Thank you.